Welcome one, welcome all to the greatest show of them all, the NFC East Mixtape. Baby, you can listen to this show wherever you get your NFC East blog podcast across the SB Nation universe. You can also watch it on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. If you do, you will see, hear, read, smell perhaps the stylings of myself. I'm RJ Ochoa from Blog of the Boys. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, what is your favorite smell?
We're definitely in trouble if the listeners can smell us. But favorite smell, I remember distinctly being in the Rose Garden in Portland, Oregon, which, by the way, I took
Oh,
this picture
great
of,
call. Yeah.
and it just smelled so beautiful there. I mean, like, that makes sense. It's roses, but I didn't like actively think about that going into it. Like, it just smelled so great.
Right. That's a great answer. Great spot to visit if you're ever in the Portland area. I'm sure our friend Justice Mosqueda has been there many a times. Yes, Bear. I was going to say cinnamon rolls. There's nothing
Mm.
like, the smell of cinnamon rolls in the house just kind of flowing through everything. Your answer was a lot more pure than mine, I'll say.
I have a time sensitive plug I wanted to get out at the top of the podcast. RJ, are you okay with that?
Is it for
All
cinnamon
right.
rolls?
So tonight, as of this posting, which should be Wednesday, September 6th, going to be at Wrong Crowd Beer Company in Westchester, PA with Jimmy Kemsky. RJ, you will not be there because you're in Texas. But if you happen to be listening to the mixtape and you want to come hang out with one half of the show and also Jimmy Kemsky, you can hang out with us on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern in Westchester, PA. Just wanted to put that out there in case any last minute listeners wanted to know about it, didn't know about it. More details on bleedinggrenation.com. There you go.
Jimmy is a part of the NFC East Mixtape universe. He has a song on the playlist. So, I mean, you can
Yep.
ask him about that. You can ask him about his thoughts about the Cowboys if you'd like. I'm sure he has a lot because he's an Eagles fan and the Cowboys live rent free in the minds of Eagles fans. Brandon, it's week 1. We did it. We made it. This is why we lifted all those weights.
What do you mean?
You don't remember the Bill Parcells quote where he's like coaching up
No.
the Giants? You've never seen that quote? It's like a really famous NFL Films quote. He's yelling at the Giants defenders on the sideline, coaching them up, obviously in the '80s, and he's like, "This is why you lift all them weights." I do a horrible Bill Parcells, but like that's such a cool line. So this is why we lifted all the offseason weights to get right here.
It is potentially exciting for non-Eagles fans here. The last week that the Eagles could be in the top spot, at least for some time.
It
Since,
is.
for those who don't know, we do the NFC
I,
East mixtape in order in terms of division standings, carrying over from the previous season.
mhm.
So there's opportunity for things to change.
I would say there's a 99% likelihood that things will change because the Cowboys and Giants are playing one another, and unless they tie, and the Eagles also win their game, it will be the Cowboys or Giants who lead the discussion next week. But that's a next week conversation. Obviously, we're here this week, and the Eagles still hold the right as reigning NFC East champions. They are looking to become the first since themselves 19 years ago to repeat as NFC East winners. We're in the time where everyone is offering up their divisional picks and conference picks and Super Bowl picks and MVPs and all sorts of stuff. In fact, I did that on Tuesday with Mark Schofield and JP Acosta on Monday Football Monday. They both picked the
Tuesday
Eagles to
football
win the NFC
Tuesday.
East. Yeah, it was. They both picked the Eagles to win the NFC East. I've seen a lot of Eagles Cowboys NFC Championship game picks. I think a lot of people really want to see that. We were obviously very close last year. Dallas couldn't live up to their end of the bargain.
That sounds
But
devastating. Like, I mean, it'd be great for a lot of reasons, but also just like having to
oh,
finish the season like that just is
it
just
would
the worst
be
case scenario.
it would
That's
be
worse than losing
incredible.
the Super Bowl.
Yeah, for any Cowboys or Eagles fan, it would be incredible if your team won it. You know what I mean? But like if
Sure.
your team lost that game, it would be one of the worst
Mhm.
losses in your lifetime. Like there's
Yeah.
no doubt about it. So yeah, I also think that sounds, and I think you agree, that sounds terrible for you and me from a work perspective. That would be, I don't know that we would ever sleep. Like it would be a very, very long week.
Yeah, it would be. And then I
Maybe
wonder
that's what
too if
this.
that would be too much juice ahead of the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like there's so much juice
Mm.
for that game. Is there any juice left for the Super Bowl at that point?
Speaking of, Super Bowl 57 is on NFL Network right now. How did that game in?
Let's turn on and see. Let's find out.
Well,
No one knows.
um, The field looks great right now.
Yeah,
But
sure it does.
anyway, okay, so let's get to week one. Our kind of regular season format is
Mm.
we discuss normally what has happened for these games or for these teams rather. Obviously, we're not quite there yet, so it's a lot of previewing, lots of previewing happening, of course, all throughout these places. So make sure to check out Bleeding Green Nation, Blog on the Boys, Big Blue View, Hogs Haven, because every team is super pumped and super gassed, obviously, for the regular season to begin. Brandon, the Philadelphia Eagles begin on the road against the New England Patriots.
Mm.
I think we said this at the time. What a horrible pick for the Patriots to honor Tom Brady. Why would you pick the team that he lost the Super Bowl to? Like, obviously he's lost multiple, but
Well,
like you would think that you would pick the Falcons, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't pick one of the lowest moments of the Tom Brady, whatever. Granted, they did beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl as well. But anyway, whatever. Can the Eagles overcome the Tom Brady power that will be at Foxborough?
I definitely think that gives the stadium some extra juice. I don't think that's nothing. At the same time, I look at this Patriots roster, and it's my classic game of which player on the roster really scares you. You can say certainly Matthew Judon coming off a great season. He's certainly
Sure.
someone you have to account for. Um, Outside of that,
I mean,
are there a lot of names here? Are you really scared of
no.
Devontae Parker at this point? I mean, you're going to bring up Juju, but Juju was like not even good in the Super Bowl,
I'm
and just
surprised that
not
we
good
haven't
as a
we
whole.
haven't seen the Juju story at least. I really anticipated that. Obviously, at the time I didn't know when the game was going to be, but I anticipated that when the game would ultimately happen, that somebody. And granted, we're recording this on Tuesday, so it's not like players have
Yeah.
spoken yet. But I really thought that somebody would have brought up the Valentine's Day joke and how he just kind of was
Well,
clapping
that
endlessly.
will be coming up tomorrow, I'm sure, as in today, Wednesday.
Well, that's all I really care about. I just want to see the like reaction and then the Eagles locker room reaction. That's really all I want. But I mean, he's not a great player right now. I mean,
No.
like Mac Jones, I mean, isn't making
Zeke.
this list. Zeke Elliott, that's true. It'd be
I,
so funny if Zeke had like 150 yards in this game.
That'd be
That would be
very funny.
amazing. I
I
would
mean,
love that.
I like Armandre Stevenson. He's certainly, I think, someone who might be more popular in fantasy or better in fantasy than necessarily reality. Nice player, but like again, not like a game breaker or anything. I feel like I've been higher on Mac Jones relative, like throughout his career, relative to everyone else. But I mean, again, I still think there's a ceiling there that you're not really intimidated by as much as I think he can be functional. But I say that I think one of the biggest storylines heading into this week one game is the Patriots offensive line is not in great shape. They just put Riley Reef on IR. Um, from left to right, they're looking at Trent Brown, Cole Strange, David Andrews, Mike Wenanu, and Calvin Anderson up front. That's on our lads. And I feel like there's just reading some of the Patriots coverage and their beat writers and everything and checking out Pat's pulpit. There's still like some uncertainty too. And also a lot of that group hasn't necessarily been able to spend time with each other in training camp because there's been injuries and stuff. So, I mean, if we're just going to oversimplify this and say, how do things look in the trenches? I mean, advantage Eagles, and that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what area of this game I'd give the advantage to New England. I mean, maybe coaching if you're, I know people are down on Bill Belichick right now, but like if you're, you know what I mean, if you're giving the like benefit of the doubt to Bill Belichick, and there's a lot of
And
pressure,
why should
obviously.
we? Why should we?
Well, I'm not saying you
I'm
should.
not saying you are, but like, why should we? I'm
I
asking.
mean, I would offer because he's the greatest coach of all time.
And
That would
what's
be
he
why.
done
But
since not having the best
well,
quarterback of all
I
time?
agree with you. To be clear, I'm just answering the question. But I mean, so it's been 3 years now without Tom Brady, and they were a playoff team one of those years. But it
Barely,
has it
yes.
has not looked great. It has not ever felt smooth. It has not ever been seamless. It has always kind of just been difficult and awkward, and like they're getting by the hair of their chinny chin chin sort of thing. So I agree. So like again, that would be the only way I could give them an advantage was to say, well, Bill Belichick is the GOAT. So like he gets the edge over Nick Sirianni. But the Eagles are the better roster. They're the more aggressive team. And I mean, there are certain teams that I'm really interested to see. I don't want to say proof of concept, but like who they are. Like the Patriots are one of those teams this year with the offensive, regeneration with Bill O'Brien. If you believe in that being a thing, you know what I mean? I don't, but
Mm.
there are some people who do. I mean, so maybe that would be like the one kind of calling card for them is that Bill O'Brien does revive this offense and it's somewhat passable, no pun intended, and that would be that's their path to victory. Is my point, but it's a very very small likelihood.
Certainly better than having Matt Patricia, Eagles defensive assistant, as the
lots of revenge angles in this game.
Offensive coordinator. Well, it's also a double agent angle potentially. I was talking about this with my friend Alex, who lives in Boston. Not a Patriots fan. He actually moved from Detroit anyway. But like he used to be. So he's a Lions fan, which is why we were talking about it. Patricia used to be the Lions head coach, of course. And we were like, how funny would it be? Like, it'd be so funny if like the Eagles lose this game and Patricia just like quit and like rejoin the Patriots. Like, as someone who would be like obviously mad about that in terms of hurting the Eagles, I still think that'd be very objectively just funny. It's like
it would. You would have to like respect the troll. You know what I mean? Like you would have to be like
brazen.
Well,
it's just like not even hiding it. Anyway,
so,
last thing.
Well, it's the first game with Patricia and Darius Slay operating on the same team again. Like I said, the revenge angle for Patricia, revenge angle, if you want to call it revenge, for Zeke, like not revenge, but like he, whatever, he knows the Eagles, blah blah blah. I'm trying to think. I guess the Juju element, if you put anything into that, I feel like I'm the only person who mildly cares. But
I think James Bradbury would love to shut the Juju down. I think he's certainly motivated by that.
My take on the James Bradbury side of it was he always seemed way more even keeled than anybody else. That's
why like going after him is really bizarre. Like he's not even like a trash talker. It's like you're picking on the guy who literally is quiet and minding his own business. Like, what are you doing? What's the point of that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Like, I think James Bradbury's like, you want to fight? Okay, fine. You know what I mean? Like, it would be one thing if like he had been like lamenting it and being like, this was a horrible call, and then and then if Juju had like whatever.
Right.
But it
like
was
he admitted.
It felt like Juju just wanted to troll.
He's not a good troller, dude.
Whatever. But as of this moment, you mentioned it's Tuesday for us. It's currently 3:17 Eastern at this moment. The the Eagles are 4-point favorites, according to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. I'll take that. I know we're going to make our picks. In case anybody doesn't know, we do another show together on the SB Nation NFL show feed that comes out on Fridays called TGI Football with our buddy Steven Serta. So we'll pick every game against the spread as well, and we'll see if this line moves between now and then. But I'll take the Eagles. And I will say, and I know you know this, but it's an important few days or week coming up for the Eagles with the Thursday night game against the Vikings. So got to get off to a hot start because you immediately go into short week. You can get through the next, now what is it, 9 days, 10 days, whatever, 2-0. Like that's such a positive start to the season, but that starts with this particular game.
I feel like the line's a little low. I feel like you would expect it to be higher, right? Isn't that fair to say?
If you had asked me to guess, I would have said 6.5.
Yeah, I would say like 5.5, maybe somewhere around there. Like 7 is, you're basically predicting like a blowout on the road, which isn't tough. It's week 1. Weird things can happen week 1. I think there is a little bit of benefit of the doubt being baked in here with Belichick. But as I mentioned, resume post Tom Brady, not so great. That one playoff game that they made, they got blown out 47-17
by the Bills when they were like super hot. To be
Josh
clear,
Allen was
that's true.
He literally had like a perfect game. Josh Allen was like flawless in that game. He was 20-25 and 5 touchdowns. I don't know. I'm over the Patriots mystique at this point. Mac Jones, again, I think if you give him a support system in place, I think maybe he could be like Jared Goff at like his ceiling. He could give you something like that, but he does not have that kind of support system in New England. I think the Patriots are going to try to run the ball a lot, keep the Eagles off the offense off the field and whatnot. Some of the best players I said on the Patriots, you're talking about their edge rush and everything, Matthew Judon, like the Eagles have the offensive line to kind of neutralize that. So I just don't really, other than like week 1 weirdness, the Eagles kind of smelling themselves too much. I don't really see the football matchups here that are just so in favor of the Patriots. I feel pretty good about the Eagles winning this game and covering.
I agree with you. I mean, there are teams that come out of nowhere, right? Maybe the Patriots do, you know what I mean? And maybe like at the end of the season, we're looking back like, oh, how did anybody doubt this team? Blah, blah, blah. But for now, I don't think there's any reason to pick against the Eagles.
2-0 under Sirianni, by the way, in week 1 games, small sample size, but they came out hot both times too. For all like the criticism about how, they're not even playing the starters in the preseason games and they're barely practicing, blah, blah, blah. That's never been like a slow start kind of issue. I know the Lions game last year ended up being close, but the Eagles got out to like a big lead in that game. And the same thing in the Falcons game in 2021, like they started hot in both of those games. So you can't even be like, well, what if they start slow? I don't see the evidence of that.
I remember during the Lions game last year, I had a tweet that ultimately wound up aging incredibly poorly. I mean, I was trolling. I think I'm better at it than Juju. But at one point, maybe Jalen Hurts started off 0 for 5 passing, or at one point he had 5 straight incompletions, whether it was to start the game or not.
Wow,
And I remember tweeting
what a
at that.
disaster!
Yeah, I remember tweeting like, I mean, again, I was just having fun, but I remember tweeting like Jalen Hurts is 0 for 5 or whatever it was. If he's missed his last 5 throws, whatever, like again, whatever the sequence was, and then like, like one of the like all-time great seasons. Like it was just like a really funny sort of direction that I chose to spit in. So my bad. Okay, so we're both taking the Eagles. Like we said, Eagles, Vikings next week on Thursday Night Football. So, of course, a quick turnaround for Philadelphia. We only have 3 games to discuss this week because as we move now to the Cowboys, who would be second in our conversation, they're playing the team who would be third in the conversation, in the New York Giants. Dallas visiting New York on Sunday Night Football. Eagles play at noon, right? Or 1 p.m. Eastern. Is that correct?
No, it's a 4:00 game.
Okay, 4:00 game. Excuse me. So you can go right from Eagles, Patriots into Cowboys, Giants, of course, and the Commanders play at noon. So you can get all
There
3
you go.
windows covered by the NFC Beast, a name that we came up with.
We came
But
up
anyway,
with that name. No one else came. No one else is allowed to use that too. That's the other thing.
Trademarked. Dallas visiting New York. The line currently Dallas by 3. It's hopscotched a little bit, been 3, 3.5, just kind of depending on when you've looked. Obviously, this is a week 1 Sunday night game that used to exist forever. Week 1 game that used to exist forever. The Cowboys are 4-6 in their last 10 season openers. Brandon, all 4 of those wins are against the Giants. They are 4-1. So half of their last 10 season openers have been against the Giants. The only loss was the first game of the Dak and Zeke era, that 2016 opener. The Cowboys have visited the Giants in the season opener before. It was to start the 2012 season when New York hung their Super Bowl 46 banner. That actually was on a Wednesday night, not the traditional Thursday night, because of, I think it was the Democratic National Convention that was happening. But anyway, Dallas won that game, spoiled the party. We haven't seen the Cowboys starters, kind of like we talked about with the Eagles. So it's the unveiling of that. The Giants are obviously feeling themselves a little bit. Our buddy Ed Valentine, who will be heard from throughout this week on the Blog and the Voice side of things, is feeling. Daniel Jones and the Giants. Your thoughts?
Did you know, RJ, that the Giants and Cowboys used to be one team during World War II? No, I feel like that's your Steagles bit, but it's like it always gets talked about how the Giants and Cowboys play a lot, but then you're like, no, they don't actually do that as much. But sure enough, it is happening this year in week 1. Why would you possibly give the Giants the benefit of the doubt? That's not to say they can't win, but why would you possibly feel like this is going to be different until you actually see it happen? I've used that logic before with them, the Giants, the Eagles. It's the same kind of logic against the Cowboys. There's many times where I've been watching a Cowboys-Giants game, typically pulling for the Giants to come out on top. And as I like to always say, don't root for the tie. It's dumb. It's not. First of all, it's not a real thing in terms of like likelihood. And second of all, you want the superior team to lose because they're gonna have to lose at some point, and you're not gonna.
That's the bigger threat. You want the bigger threat to lose. It's very obvious.
Always want the bigger threat to lose. Like I don't know how that's not more obvious than
Now,
it
again,
is.
I'm told I hate that every time. It's like, well, I'm rooting for both teams to lose. Okay, that's great. That's cool. I agree with you on giving the Giants the benefit of the doubt. I'm very interested to see.
Not giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I mean, on the subject of giving them the benefit of the doubt, because I'm very interested to see. I think if they look great, then okay, hey, like all the moves and
and everyone can line up and apologize. But until then, no.
This does feel like a game where Jalen Hyatt's going to have like a 64-yard touchdown or something.
First play of the game. Chuck it out deep. RJ's muted his microphone because Bear is chiming in. He's really excited. He's worked up. He's excited for week 1.
He is. This is. I don't know. Well, you give your thoughts.
I did. I said I'm not. If I'm looking at this matchup, I can't possibly take the Giants to win it. If we're talking about what are some of the best matchups in the Giants' favor? I do think it's interesting that Tyler Smith popped up in the injury report. Seemingly doesn't sound like super serious.
As we sit right now, again on Tuesday afternoon, Jerry Jones began his biweekly radio interviews on Tuesday morning on 105 through the Fan. He said they considered it to be minor. It was a hamstring issue, just to be clear. So it's kind of a scary thing to hear out loud because you always kind of think of that as something that lingers. But, again, Cowboys are saying everything is fine with Tyler Smith. Who would have ever thought he would have been the first T. Smith to get hurt this season in any capacity? But
T.Y.
nevertheless,
Smith.
that's true. Cowboys optimistic about Tyler Smith. Other than that, I mean, they haven't totally offered a ton on whether or not Donovan Wilson will faux show play this game. If you recall, he was hurt at the beginning of training camp, but everybody was like, he'll be fine for week 1. You have to wonder whether or not the Cowboys, feel like they can maybe cheat life a little bit and keep him on ice. He's not on the PUP list or IR or anything, so maybe he would be a game day inactive. But we'll see. But either way, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm nervous about Darren Waller.
Yeah.
But
What
just
worries you the most, I guess, heading into
Darren
this
Waller
matchup?
and I mean, I say Jalen Hyatt, but this is, I guess, sometimes it's scary to see things in action. You know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't seen Stephon Gilmore in action. You know what I mean? So, in theory, I'm not worried about Jalen Hyatt because I really trust the Cowboys cornerback duo, and I really trust Deron Blaine in the slot. So, I mean, I'm just nervous about some of the better players on the Giants winning at some point, whether it be Darren Waller or Jalen Hyatt, whatever the case may be. I'm really anxious. Maybe that's the best word. I'm anxious about seeing the Cowboys offense and the Mike McCarthy-led offense and Dak and Tony Pollard. We haven't seen them, you know what I mean, and CD and Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks involved and the Jalen Tolbert experience taking off. I'm just anxious. I believe in it, but, it's hard to, it's easy to believe, but it is also scary when it's time to peel the plastic off your phone for the first time. You know what I'm saying?
So there's the scenario where it's business as usual. Cowboys kind of just have their way generally with the Giants, like they typically do. Also think there's the scenario where, okay, let's paint that picture. It's Daniel Jones comes out looking hotter than expected. He hits a deep bomb to Jalen Hyatt early in the game. Cowboys offense trying to run it with Tony Pollard, and he just doesn't look totally the same. He looks like he's hampered. It's not really effective. The Giants defensive line, which certainly in theory at least is good against the run. It wasn't last year. We'll see if they're better this year. They tried to do some things to shore up the run by signing Bobby Okereke and adding Ashawn Robinson and obviously Dexter Lawrence. Yeah, you get him back, and you still have Leonard Williams. Maybe Kayvon Thibodeau takes a leap. Maybe the Giants, that defensive line, the run defense is really improved. They're putting a lot of pressure on Dak to pass the ball. And it's a big question. Is this truly, turning a new leaf for Dak from 2022 to 2023? Or is it more of the same player last year who certainly had some bad luck, but are there kind of some forced throws in there too? And just does it kind of, I think if it gets uncomfortable early for the Cowboys, I think maybe things start to unravel a little bit. Not in a way where they necessarily totally lose the game and they get blown out, but I think it just feels like more of the same as last year. And the Giants are kind of just hanging around. It would almost be like a redux of last year for both teams. It's like the Giants are hanging around. They're hanging around. The Giants didn't go out and smash teams last year. They always just kind of they were able to stay in the game. And at the end, they were able to kind of just outlast their opponent and not make as many mistakes as them. I think it would be something like that.
So if you recall, the last matchup between these two teams was kind of close, for the most part.
On Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, until it wasn't. So New York got out to the 3-0 lead. Dak had the interception, whatever, and then Dallas scored, so they were up 7-3. Then New York's up 10-3, then 13-3, and then Dallas took the lead. That was the halftime score. 13-3, 13-7 was the halftime score. There was a lot of what are you doing, playing with your food, blah blah blah. And then Dallas took the lead and never looked back. 14-13, 21-13, 28-13, just kind of this barrage. And so I think, and I think you think, that the Cowboys are a significantly better team than the Giants. We talk about how many months have we talked about the NFCs, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Niners, in whatever order. I mean, the Giants are not in that cut. And I would offer they're not even in the second cut, right? The second cut might be, I would put the Vikings there. Some people would put the Seahawks, whatever. They're not even in that cut is my point. But so if you're, and it is week 1, so you do have to offer that qualifier. But if you're playing with your food a little bit, I mean, don't do that. Just go out, smash them, get out of town, get a road division win in your pocket, and go home, be happy.
Do you think the stadium will be juiced? I think there's, some
of course
more
they will. This is the most excited Giants fans have been in how long?
That's not nothing. I mean, I think we saw some of that with the Lions last year. The Lions crowd, I think, was so much louder than anyone expected. It didn't help them in terms of, well, the Eagles won the game, but things were getting close there towards the end, and I think the crowd was kind of like definitely giving that Lions team some juice. If that was a road game, I don't know if they fight their way back into the game like that. So I do think that's a factor as well. I could see the Giants making it a close game. What's the line again?
-3.
I mean, I'll take the Cowboys, but I'm going to take the Cowboys as my lock of the week because I think they're going to win, but I do think it could get a little, I think it'll be a game into the end is how I'll put it.
You are taking them as your lock of the week?
I'm going to take the Cowboys to cover as my lock of the week, but I think it'll be a game that's decided late in the game, very late.
So I'm going to offer some like team building ideas for us for the NFL show. I think that we should only be allowed to lock a team once on the NFL
all year,
show.
We can a Survivor League pick, basically.
Right. Well, you can. So for anyone who's unaware, on Fridays with Steven, we pick every game that is.
I disagree. This is about making money.
Well, I know, but like we can
and
workshop
really
this
good last year.
We can workshop this with Steven. Maybe it's not once. Maybe it's.
I want to help the listeners. And
maybe
make
it's
like
money
3
like
times last year.
Maybe it's like 3 times. Again, we can workshop it with Steven, but like I think that makes it challenging. You know what I mean? Because you can't just like ride one team's coattails.
Well, I kind of have that rule in place. We had it last year. Like you can't do it repeat weeks. That's the point.
I know.
Of that.
All I'm saying, maybe once a month. You know what I mean? Like you can only. So this is your Cowboys lock of September or something like that. So again, we'll talk to Steven. I'm gonna take the Cowboys too. I'm not gonna lock them up. But 3 points is easy, I think, against the Giants. Should be easy. So go out, do it. And then next week, we've got Eagles-Vikings. But next week, I've been trying to make this a thing. The Cowboys are starting their season off Sinatra style because they play the New York Giants and then they come home and play the New York Jets. So the last thing you need, by the way, is to drop this game and then come home and have Aaron Rodgers show up, especially if they get the Monday Night Football win and they're 1-0 and you're 0-1 and then all the 0-2 talk. Don't put yourself in that position.
Could also be in the spot where, like, if things go well with the Eagles and against the Patriots, and then they're able to beat the Vikings, you're going into that Sunday already knowing the Eagles are 2-0.
Right.
So like, it's like, okay, the pressure's on. Like, you got to keep pace. And then, if you lost to Rodgers, it could get that's a panic scenario quickly.
Also, like from a Cowboys angle, so Philly's third week is at Tampa, so kind of a easy game, obviously. But Cowboys week 3 is at Arizona. So you get this win, you go home, you focus on Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? Like you're in a strong position to start off 3-0. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to look at the season in little sections like that. So just get through the Arizona game right now. So very, very, very excited to see Mike McCarthy's offense. So we're both taking the Cowboys. And right now we're going to take something else, and that is a break to hear a word from our sponsors. Welcome back. While we were gone, Brandon, you told me what you close your eyes and see when you close your eyes right now.
I see the fact that you can't look at the season in chunks, RJ. You have to look at it 1 week at a time. The next game, that's all we're focused on. We're just preparing for the next opponent. And then after that, it's the next one. And after that's the next. But it's all one at a time. We want to go 1-0 this week. That's the goal here.
Okay, that's super cliche and lame. But anyway, before we get to the Commanders game, I wanted to tell you something or kind of bounce something off of you. So the Washington Commanders, speaking of those Arizona Cardinals, they are visiting them. And the Commanders are the biggest favorite of the week within the division. They are 7-point favorites. So I saw something in the Washington Post. I read it on Sunday night, and I wanted to just discuss it with you. So Neil Greenberg wrote this, and he referenced Brian Burke's. He did this several years ago for ESPN, and it was like an aggregate way of it was like a formulaic way of determining which coaches were on the hot seat. And there was, I don't know if you've ever read this before, but it was like the playoff win drought, and all these things have like quantifiable, elements that you can kind of effectively create a formula to discern which teams are on the hottest of hot seats. So that being said, this formula spat out Josh McDaniels as the coach with the second hottest seat. He's at 62%. Who do you think is number one?
I don't know.
Well, who are we talking about? Ron Rivera, 88% chance of being fired, according to this particular study.
I mean, I don't think his seat is hot to me. Like, that's not how I think of it. I just think like
he's
a
not
lame
that
duck
it's
head
hot.
coach. So he's
call it what you want, but like that's what I'm saying. Call it what you want, because like like part of what impacts Ron Rivera's like formula is the new ownership, right, and things like that. So like again, it's not like he's got one foot out the door.
Someone who like has boom bust, but like has a chance to actually save their job. You know what I mean? Like if they do well, they'll keep it. I don't really know that that's the case here. Like, that doesn't really. I mean, obviously, unless
I thought it
he does
I
super
thought it was
well.
interesting. I thought it was an interesting way to quantify how the likelihood of Ron Rivera leaving. Whether you believe that's like because of pressure or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
I mean,
like
if
this
you
is
phrase it, most likely, head coach to be fired first. He's certainly up there. But again, part of that is just baked in because it's a new ownership and there's no commitment to him.
right.
They weren't the people who hired him. So, and that's unique. There's not many coaches who are like that. There's some, but there's not many who are like that.
So anyway, what is it like to have to root for Jonathan Gannon as an Eagles fan? Because you want the Commanders to lose, so you've got to root for Jonathan Gannon. Went from like again around Christmas time, like you loved. I understand that people were kind
That's
of
not
wearing
true.
thin on maybe people not love, but like at least enjoyed to like public enemy number one. Like the leap from that to that, only Chauncey Gardner Johnson took a similar leap over the course of the offseason. But nevertheless, Eagles fans rooting for Jonathan Gannon's Cardinals, who won't name a starting quarterback, Brandon, because it would be an advantage for the Commanders to
Competitive
have.
advantage, baby.
Yeah. I just don't. There's no way that the Cardinals have a shot here. None.
I would think not, because they're not really trying to win in terms of the bigger picture. Obviously, the players are going out there and they're trying. They have jobs to compete for it, but not a good roster. Who is the quarterback? The fact that you don't know the answer to that question is a major red flag going into week one. I think Josh Dobbs, again, gives you a chance to win like a given game and can do some things, and I know he has some familiarity with the coaching staff. RJ left the screen, by the way, for the audio listeners. I don't know where he went. He actually left a while. Now he's back. But I was saying, RJ, that
No, you don't know the quarterback. That freaks you out.
you don't know the quarterback. And also, I know that like he has some familiarity with the coaching staff from their time together with the Browns, or like the Browns. So what the Cardinals offensive coordinator or whatever like has a background with the Browns. I don't think they were both there at the same time. Regardless, even if that's true, it's not like Josh Dobbs has a lot of like time to practice with these new teammates and like
No,
develop a rhythm and chemistry in those players, and like that's not good.
This is the Caleb Williams tank. Like, I'm not the first or the 5 millionth person to say that, but like that's clearly what's happening here. I mean, this is not an attempt to put out the best possible version of yourself if you're the Cardinals. I mean, I'm kind of happy that people are kind of coming around to the Cardinals being this like loser organization. I've said for years that the Cardinals are pathetic. Like the fact that they put Carson Palmer in the Ring of Honor is one of the most pathetic things that I've ever seen a franchise do. Like,
It's really sad that Larry Fitzgerald played his whole career there.
it's incredibly sad. But that like all the Cardinals do, ironically, is take the Larry Fitzgeralds. You know what I'm saying? Like the players who were like really great somewhere else, and then like let them have their like kind of swamp. They retire in Arizona. You know what I mean? Like,
You,
oh, the
you,
weather's
you
nice and the golf's great. Like, I mean, the weather's really hot, but you get my point. Like, it's not cold.
really should have been on the Steelers at one point. Go back to Pittsburgh. Really should have happened at one point, even late in his career. It just
Or
would
the
have been
Vikings.
it would have cleansed him, from the loser stench of the Cardinals to like an actual respectable NFL organization.
I saw a tweet yesterday. I'm working on pulling it up because I tweeted the matchups for every team in the division. This scenario, this situation has like Commanders blowout written all over it, and then the national media is like, I don't know, man. Watch
Exactly.
out. Oh,
I was just gonna say this.
Here it was. It was from Gabe Farias. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Whose handle is Rhyme for a Dime. They tweeted at me and said, Commander's going to thrash the Cardinals week one, like 28-7. And everyone is going to be like, oh my gosh, Washington might challenge for the NFC East title, conveniently forgetting that the Cardinals are a tanking team. That's totally going to happen.
Well, I was going to say, as if everyone hasn't also been saying that the Cardinals, and also they'll be like, well, I know the Cardinals are bad, but still, Washington looks pretty good. I do think there is something
in the NFL, nothing's free. And you know what I mean? Like, oh, I totally agree.
I still think there is something to there being like similar to how there is when a head coach gets fired and the interim head coach comes in, and that bump you see sometimes. It doesn't really last, but it happens for at least one game. And I do think you could see that here in the owner effect. I do think there is like a sense of relief and a weight off a lot of people in the organization, not just the players, but also like the coaching staff and everything, and feeling like, okay, maybe we're not great, but there is actual like opportunity here now, if not necessarily even with this organization, but with another one. Like there's a brighter future now, and I do think that weight will kind of be lifted off. And this is the Commanders' first sellout at home since like when. I don't know, since RG3 in the playoffs or something. I don't know, but point being that there are going to be seemingly a lot of fans there and excited and juiced up for a new era. It's not quite the new era in terms of, a lot of pieces have yet to be in place, I think, for the long term. Although, maybe Sam Howell can prove he's something. We'll see. This is a nice opportunity for him. It's a really good start to the season for him, I think, to settle in. Terry McLaurin being unsure makes me, a little anxious, but I mean, you still have Jahan Dotson there. I think they'll figure it out just fine, and I will take them. What's the spread on this game?
7.
That's a big. I know the Cardinals are bad. It's a big line.
It's a big line. But I'm fine. I'm fine taking it and just being wrong. You know what I mean? Like I would rather not believe in the Cardinals at all.
What are you putting your faith in? That's the question. If you're going to take the Cardinals in that spot, you're just saying
it's more the Cardinals being terrible and Sam Howell being serviceable and Jahan Dotson carrying the way, even if Terry McLaurin can't. Like, I mean, like you said, we don't know who the quarterback is for the Cardinals, but the Commanders do have a solid pass rush. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not inconceivable that they could have like 4 sacks and one of them be a turnover or something like that. Like, that seems pretty par in my mind.
Speaking of pass rush, I think Chase Young isn't necessarily a lock to play.
Yeah, he's
man,
back.
Not a good situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's depressing, I'm sure, for Commanders fans. I mean, it feels like, I don't know. Chase Young started to get, like, to me, give off vibes of like trade candidate at the deadline for like a team who's like in sore need, like playoff contender. Like, couldn't you see the Steelers? Like,
I was just gonna say,
like just bring them over here and like we'll figure it out and blah blah blah. I mean, it's possible.
There was some buzz about that, the Steelers being interested in him this offseason. I could see them buying low on him, and then naturally him being like not like a all-world player like he was supposed to be, but like like a decent role player at least.
I did want to get one last thing in on the Commanders. It isn't related to this game, but I don't know if you saw this. On Tuesday morning, they announced coaching promotions. Did you see this?
I did. Juan Castillo among
them. There were 4 promotions, inclling Juan Castillo, who's now
former
the run
Eagles
game
defensive coordinator.
Former Eagles offensive line coach and fantastic one. Former Texas A&I Javelina. I don't know that I've ever told you this. My uncle was roommates with him in college.
I think you did.
At Texas A&I.
Everyone had nothing but nice things to say about Juan Castillo as a
right.
A guy.
But Adam Schefter added a note to it. I don't know if you saw this. He said old ownership would not greenlight these promotions, but it remained. But he said, but it remained on the top of Ron Rivera's list once the sale closed, and now it is done. Presuming all that's true, that's like really good job, like, and without a shock, like really good of Ron Rivera to get that done. Like, he's again a very good person, very good human. So awesome of him to take care of his guys. Again, I know the name Juan Castillo is not a popular one in Philadelphia Eagles lore anymore, but cool story. So just thought that was interesting that allegedly previous ownership wouldn't greenlight promotions. Why? Like, because they'd have to pay them more money. Like, so stupid.
Guess, which that's believable because they wouldn't want to do that. But also, it seems almost hard to believe from the standpoint of it can't be that much. And also, there's no cap space on coach spending, and how much more could it be really in the grand scheme of things for a billionaire owner? But then again, he also cut costs at every turn, embarrassingly so.
So we have then all 3, the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders winning. So the only loser in the division being the Giants. So then our predicted order that we will discuss the teams in next week will be the Cowboys, Commanders, because they'll have the NFC win. And the Eagles would only have an AFC one. And then the Eagles and the Giants. Wow. Shuffling of the deck. Anything else we have to get to?
Yeah, like, why don't we get into some quick season prediction stuff for the NFC East? So do you, because it's like, obviously we're going to cover them every week, but let's go on the record now before the season starts. Say what we think could happen. Who do you think is going to win the division?
I'm going to pick the Cowboys. So you mentioned predictions. I mentioned I did that on Monday Football Monday, so everyone should go listen to that. And I picked the Cowboys, like I mentioned. So I'm taking the Cowboys, and a lot of that is belief in the Cowboys, but a lot of that is belief in regression for the Eagles. And regression doesn't mean like to the opposite side of the spectrum, but they were just so amazing last year. Plus, we love to talk about there has been a repeat winner in the division in 19 years. Like, that's working against them. And plus, the Cowboys with Dak have generally played well against them. And so if those games matter, seismically, I think they'll lead in Dallas' favor. So I'm going to take the Cowboys.
I'm going to take the Cowboys as well. I think it's going to
Wow.
come down to, I think both the Eagles and Cowboys, I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be like Cowboys 12-5, Eagles 11-6, or it's the same record and it comes down to like some silly tiebreaker, like strength of victory or something like it. I think it's going to be, the point being, I think it's a very narrow margin of separation.
You think they live up to the hype as both being contenders,
I
and
think they're
they just
both
happen to play in
good.
the same division, right?
And I think it's a matter of just like it's splitting hairs. It's like
Mhm.
very close. I think it's going to be the closest division title we'll see in years in terms of what decides it. Again, I think maybe even coming down to some like third tiebreaker thing or whatever. I think it's going to be that close. And um, so
I
those
think
are
they're
your
both.
1-2,
I
and
think
then
they're
I'll
both
take the
playoff teams.
Giants,
Yeah, and then I think it's Dallas, Philly, New York, Washington for
Commanders.
me.
What do you think the Cowboys? How do you think their season ends?
I mean, so it was somewhat of a like Homer perspective on the NFL show. I picked them to win the Super Bowl over the Bengals. I mean, I think that they're as equipped as they have been, like to be like to put it in like real terms, like, and so I think that like I think the same ceiling exists for them as does every team that isn't the Chiefs, because the Chiefs have a higher ceiling than everybody, obviously. So like they could totally win the Super Bowl, they could totally make it to the Super Bowl or make it to the NFC Championship game. Like there's no reason that you can see right now to me that like inhibits them or the Eagles or even the Giants to a smaller extent of being able to do that. So I think they're a playoff team, and presuming nothing crazy happens, they should be in the mix.
Yeah, but I'm not asking you what you think can happen. I'm asking you to make a prediction.
I
How does
think
the
they'll.
Cowboys season end?
I think that they.
What's the final game?
I think the final game is the Super Bowl.
Okay, do they win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I told you. I said they beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. That
Yeah.
was my NFL show pick.
All right. My pick is gonna be the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Hey, how about
So,
that?
oh, what a.
Crazy.
Who do they
I
beat?
do. I think there's so much working against that, including being in a division where there's another top looming threat, and you can even necessarily definitely win your own division. But there's something different, I feel like, about Jalen Hurts. And there was something different about the Eagles last year. And it's a different year. But typically, when the Eagles aren't expected to be good, they are, and vice versa. And they kind of broke that a little bit last year. I wonder if things are changing a little bit in that regard, and Hurts has something to do with that. So I'm going to lean into it. And even though it's hard, I think it's a little bit not fair to the Eagles if you're just going to be like, well, they're definitely going to get worse and blah, blah, blah. Like we talk about that stuff. I don't know if we proportionately talk about how still have the best quarterback in the conference, still have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, still have a great offensive line, still have a great defensive line. Are they a flawless team? By no means. Did they lose both coordinators? Yeah. But did they also replace them with some people who are very much considered up and coming, especially in the case of Brian Johnson? I think Deshaun Desai is a little bit more of an unknown, but in Brian Johnson in the offense, which I think ultimately kind of matters more, I think they're really good there. And I think there's a lot of reason to believe in those things still. And I can't say it's like I believe it beyond the shadow of a doubt just because of the nature of the NFL being so
Right.
unpredictable and zany and crazy. But I do legitimately believe that that's their ceiling. And I saw Jalen Hurts with my own eyes like play amazing in a Super Bowl and feel like he can win a Super Bowl. So I'll go with it. I don't know who they beat. I'm gonna say they beat the Chiefs. They get revenge
That
and
that
they
would be
beat the Chiefs.
so boring. I mean, like, on like if they're
Not
gonna win
for
this,
not for
like no,
Eagles
I'm
fans.
and obviously not for Eagles fans, but like I would hate that any year. Like, you know what I mean? To have like the same two teams, that would be so boring.
Well,
Like,
we would need the rubber match at that point. We would
I guess that's
need a
true.
third straight one just to see who's the true champ.
But even so, last year featured the exact same AFC Championship game and the Niners in the NFC Championship. So like of the final four, 75% was the same last year. You know what I mean? That was so boring. Like it's always nice. Like the Bengals were so nice when they just like showed up. You know what I mean? Out of nowhere. Like
It
that's
was
always like a
refreshing
lot of
for
fun.
sure.
So it would be boring, but I understand that obviously it wouldn't be for Eagles fans.
Okay.
Okay, so we've both established long-term picks for the seasons for teams and obviously the division as a whole. I think we should do some NFL superlatives, but with
Okay.
regards to the division specifically. So defensive rookie of the year, I think you're going to take who?
Jalen Carter.
Obviously, you're taking Mozzie Smith, right? Yeah.
I mean, you don't even believe that.
No, I mean, if I have to pick one within the division, Jalen Carter is the pick that makes
I
the
mean,
most
Jalen
sense.
Carter could
Obviously.
win it. Like he might win the actual award.
It's tough. Although didn't Quinton Williams win it as a defense and Aaron Donald? So I
Not
mean,
sure,
there's
but I mean,
precedent.
He is a good. He unlike a lot of other players though, like he's on a good team. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
and
a
a
lot of
good
these players
visible
are usually
team.
on really bad teams, so I think he could eventually, yeah. If well, assuming the Eagles are good, he has that potential of more national attention because of that. And the Eagles are going to be in like a billion time prime. They only have 3 1 o'clock starts this year, which is
Wow,
very tough
3.
on
What a bunch of
me.
losers. The Cowboys
That's
only have 2. So
that's very hard on me. Yeah, but you're also in the Central, which is like a little bit better, not a world's difference, but it's a little bit better. But
it's the same time though that the game happens. Like whether it's at 1 Eastern or noon Central, like it's the same time. The
maybe you don't
kickoffs
have
are
to
the
stay
same.
up as late as I do.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, so we both have Jalen Carter's defensive rookie of the year. My offensive rookie of the year pick within the division is Jalen Hyatt.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of like who are the
Luke
offensive rookies.
Schoonmaker, your boy.
Who else would it be? I like Chris Rodriguez, but and also so the folks at Hogs Haven, as I mentioned.
If
But
you
I
wanted
don't.
to do like, I always find it interesting how baseball allows like rookie of the year voting. You know what I mean? Like to play. I don't know the exact rules. I need to ask John Stolness, but like sometimes players who have played in Major League Baseball are allowed to win like rookie of the year.
Yeah, we're
So
not
like,
doing that. It's
no,
not
no, no. So
football.
like that would be the only way you could say like maybe Sam Howell. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
No, no,
But no,
doesn't
Jalen
count.
Hyatt. I agree with you. I'm just you asked a question. I was
I
answering.
think it has to be him, like by default, almost.
We've
I
talked
don't
him
know
up
who else it
enough
would
that like
be.
if we don't pick him, then we're just stupid. You know what I mean?
I
So
just don't know who else it would be.
I mean, Deuce Vaughn is technically an option if you think
Okay,
that
true.
there's like
That's fair.
a renaissance there.
But
I
I'll go
mean,
with Jalen Hyatt. You're right. That's probably the best bet.
defensive player of the year is clearly Micah Parsons.
I mean, how many players have more sacks than Hassan Reddick since the
I
start of
would.
2020?
I've said this before though. I would not take Micah to win that award. Like I would not take the bet to win that award because he's the favorite. I mean, I would not put money on it right now.
I think
But
Hassan Reddick could win that award.
I don't know. Like
I think he's legit chance.
No, I think like his season last year is working against him because like to win things like that, you have to like generally outperform yourself. Like it's hard to have like a less impressive individual season and still win the award.
He went from 12.5 to 11 to 16, and then he had 3 in the playoffs. I don't think that's.
I know, but if he
I think
has
he could
like
be a 20 sack a year guy. I think
okay,
that's
but
within range for him.
my point is if he has 13 sacks, which is still an impressive season. It's the argument is like, well, he had 16 last year. That's why it's so hard.
Yeah, but sometimes you need that previous year to actually like get more
player
respect.
of the year in the division, Micah Parsons.
I'm gonna say Reddick.
You don't believe that. You know you don't.
Why not? He's been awesome. He's
So
been very good.
So if you had to bet,
he's also been way
on
bigger.
Micah or Hassan Reddick, you're going to bet on Hassan Reddick.
Yeah,
you're not just lying to me now. You're lying to. You're telling you want to make the listeners money.
Been more
and you're going to tell them to bet on Hassan Reddick.
Who's been more impactful in the postseason?
Okay, so who are you gonna? You're really gonna do this? Just so everyone knows.
Why it's not that crazy?
Okay,
of a
that's
thing.
fine. That's hey,
again,
it's your
the 2 players
ballot.
with more sacks than him since 2020 are Myles Garrett and TJ Watt.
I'm good with.
You think
I'm not gonna lose a wink of sleep tonight over this. Like I'm at peace on this. So offensive player of the year. I think the contenders,
really
the contenders for each team, offensive player of the year. I actually would say Philly's contenders Devontae Smith.
I don't want to do like can we just take the quarterbacks out of it? Because that's not like
no, yeah. This is generally like the Mark Schofield said this on the show. It's like the best wide receiver, effectively. So my suggestion for the I think the Devontae Smith glow up year is coming. Like that's it's not a slight against AJ Brown. I just think Devontae is amazing. So I think Devontae, CD's the contender for the Cowboys. Darren Waller would be the option for the Giants. And I guess Terry McLaurin, unless Jahan Dotson passed him up, on the Commanders. But AJ Brown is obviously a factor. I don't think Brandon Cooks could do enough on his own to win the award. But again, if you're going to win like that award, you have to have like a statistical season to back it up. So it's difficult to imagine like, one team having 2 like 1,200-yard receivers. I know it happens, but like it's not likely is my point.
Yeah. There could be a scenario where, let's say, Terry McLaurin's injury kind of is more nagging and an issue, and then Dotson just like kind of emerges and is like has a huge, even if the Commander's not necessarily being good, but like there's a scenario where even a player on a not great team could win this because they're just so dominant with the volume that they get. Right. Like if Dotson has like I don't know what's a high but reasonable number. Like what if he has
1,500 yards? 1,500 yards.
I was going to say like 16 or something.
And 18 touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah, he could be that guy, even though if the Commanders aren't like the number 1 team in the division. But not counting on that as the most likely thing, but saying it's within the realm of possibility. And this is a tough ward because there's a lot of legitimate contenders. I think AJ Brown is like the best offensive player in the NFC East, and I love Devontae, but I think AJ is that guy, and I'm just gonna have to lean with him.
I don't think that's a bad direction to lean in. Um, it's just again to the logic. So he 4 yards shy of 1,500 last year, 11 touchdowns. I mean, that's just so hard to beat. You know what I
Well,
mean?
you say that, but the Eagles were also in a lot of scenarios where they were like running so much late in game. They were one of the lowest passing, like game script things in terms of they got up so much that they. So a lot of fantasy people are expecting, for example, Jalen Hurts' passing volume to go up just because they're by virtue of they're going to be in closer games this year, and I think you could
Sure.
see that manifest with guys like AJ Brown as well. Like, I think you could see their volume actually increase just by virtue of being in closer games.
I think that the AJ Brown pick makes the most sense, but again, I think
He's the
Devontae.
favorite. If we're going with
Yeah, I think
odds.
he's
He's
like
easily the favorite.
if we laid out odds, he's definitely the favorite. But I just think that Devontae will eat into it. You know what I mean? Again, it has nothing to do with AJ. It's just he's such a great secondary option.
No
But
argument for me. They're
um,
both very great.
I would say AJ Brown has to be the favorite. But again, the stellar season of last year works against you. That's my logic on a lot of things. Um,
And
I
Devontae
mean,
and AJ against
I
each
think
other, like you
if
said.
you had to place a bet on hypothetical odds, Darren Waller might be the one because like he's going to get a ridiculous amount of targets. You know what I mean? Like he might be the one who has a statistical season to back it up.
Yeah, like the Dotson thing, basically.
Right. Well, except he doesn't have the Terry McLaurin. You know what I mean? Like going on. So, okay. So, we did defensive player, offensive player. We need coach of the year and MVP. And I think we're both like, we know you're going to go Sirianni, Hurts.
I don't know if I'm gonna go with them for coach of the year. Because like the Eagles win projected win total, which I think is a factor, because that sets the reasonable expectation for what the team is expected to do, and then should be judged somewhat against that. The Eagles are what, like 10.5, 9.5 or something. So it's like it's hard for him, going to be hard for him to like go way over the expectation as much as I think he's more likely to just meet it. Um, I think McCarthy is a better narrative going for him in the sense of like, he's taking over. So like, if the Cowboys take any kind of step forward at all, even if they're one win better, it's like, well, look, we're even better,
Well, and
or
to
we're
your point,
consistent.
like if they do, like say they sweep the Eagles, then it's like you knock down, and they say they do win the division, then it's you know what I mean. You took over the division from this amazing Eagles team, blah blah blah. Like you're right. Like people generally for awards like this tend to award the like come upper as opposed
Hmm.
to the like fall
Right.
downer.
That's what I'm saying. You're measuring things versus expectation. If you perform as expected, you're not going to get really credit for that, even though the win total could be at a high number. That deserves a lot of credit.
So we agree it's
Yeah,
Mike McCarthy.
I think he is the best narrative because it can't be Dable, because unless the
No.
Giants like win the division and they win 13 games, it can't be him. It would have to be that, and it's not going to be Ron Rivera unless they win the division, basically, which no one would expect.
Yeah. Okay. So then MVP. I think this is actually the tightest one. Like we like have mildly debated some of these things, and whoever winds up having the season worthy of it is going to be
Hmm.
like indicative. It will be emblematic of the way the seasons unfold. Like if Dak does, get rid of the interceptions and just lights it up with Brandon Cooks, Mike McCarthy's West Coast, Tex Coast offense, whatever. Like obviously it's Dak's year, and the narrative I think works out for Dak to win MVP in real life, like the actual MVP, not the one we're giving out here, because quarterback of the like if the Cowboys are the 1 seed, you know what I mean? Like I think like some people think they will be. Like that works out really well in his favor. He's never won the award before. He's never really been closely in contention for the award. But similarly, if Jalen Hurts, does it again, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, well, it wasn't a flash in the pan. Like he
Yep.
really is. If he keeps doing the goal line sneaks and everything like that, like again, I think then there this is not at all intended to sound like some sort of slight. Sometimes I think there's like a bit of like making up for the people that the like voters do with awards. So I think
Mhm.
people could be like, well, like he could in that respect, he could have a less statistically great season. And the voters could be like, well, he really deserved the MVP last year and he didn't get it. So let's go ahead and give him this one. You know what I'm saying?
The Joel Embiid MVP.
It's how appropriate for another Philly athlete.
Tough for me to say, but it's true in some part. With Hertz, I definitely think the repeatability is like a big factor in his favor in the sense of like, well, Shane Steichen left, so it clearly wasn't him. And they also, let's say, they win 11 games. That's a step back from their total. But if the offense is still like killer, and it's clear that like the defense just fell off because they lost players, like that's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt Jalen Hurts. It's only going to help him. Like if they're
Right.
able to be a really good team again with the defense getting worse, then people are going to be like, well, it wasn't the defense. Truly, it was actually him. And I mean, if he just by virtue of becoming the first quarterback to lead a team to repeat in this crazy division, like that kind of gets you the MVP.
At least our MVP. We'll see.
Right. In
Okay.
this context.
Any other awards we want to hand out before or predict before we leave?
No.
Okay. Well, then it's time to add our songs to the NFC East Mixtape playlist.
That's true.
So Rachel, as always, got hers in early, and as always, delivered a banger. She chose "Forever," and she even wrote it out: "Forever" by Drake, Kanye, Lil Wayne, and Eminem. Way to go, Rachel!
Huge song back playing like basketball in high school. You know, it was like a big warm up song. It was just a big song. I think in like when I was maybe in like ninth grade. That's like 2006, 7-ish around that time.
It's there with "Till I Collapse" by Eminem. That's the like ultimate
another huge
high school basketball
high
warm up
school.
song.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're probably still doing that.
Not quite a warm up song, but like a listen to in the locker room to get hyped by yourself song. Remember the Name by Fort Minor.
Oh yeah.
So
20% whatever.
No, what it's 20%.
I don't know. 10% skill. I don't remember it. Butchering it.
I have to look it up now.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so hold up. Let me look this up. So this is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain,
yeah,
and 100% reason to remember the name.
Remember the name.
So like you're hearing that, you're like, okay, like well, 5%, concentrated power, that's not bad. 50% pain, like what the heck? So wow.
You know what they say?
What do they say?
Well, if you know it, I don't need to say it.
Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna go with a song I alluded to earlier because I really want to drive home the point that the Cowboys are starting off the season Sinatra style. The theme from New York, New York. That's my song choice for this week. Again, New York Giants, New York Jets. So boom.
That makes sense.
What a great that's a great start to a song.
Makes sense. That's a good pick by you. Sinatra is awesome. Love Frank Sinatra. I had to listen to that. So I went to New York. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I feel like I mentioned this somewhere, but I'm going to mention it again here. I went to New York with my friend Jess earlier this year, and I had us listen to that in the car on the way up because I had to set the tone. I had to feel the New York vibe. RJ, are you frozen? It looks like you're frozen. Can you hear me at all? He's completely frozen, and I can't hear him. Will he come back, or will I just keep talking? I guess I'm just going to keep talking because it's rolling. Okay, my pick for the playlist is a pump-up song. Kind of want to go with Till I Collapse after hearing that, but I cannot because that is not what I truly had in my heart. RJ is messaging me on Slack to keep going. He dropped out of the chat. He's saying he's having internet issues. Rachel can edit through some of this, maybe. I mean, I could just give my song and I could wrap us up, but I kind of want RJ to react to my song. So it's not very satisfying if I just say it here. So the show must go on, though, and I will make my pick. Metallica's Fuel. Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. I don't know why, but I feel like that's just a good pump-up song here for week 1. I was thinking about Enter Sandman, which is obviously a classic, but then I just thought about how that's like a big college football thing and just didn't fit the same kind of mode that I was thinking about specifically. So Metallica's Fuel, a pump-up song, if you will. Add it to the playlist. Okay, this has been the NFC East Mixtape, which you can find on podcast feeds of many kinds, including bleedinggreennation.com or Bleeding Green Nation and Blogging the Boys. You can also check out the associated YouTube channels for Bleeding Green Nation and Blogging the Boys. You can also check out Righteous Felon Craft Jerky by going to righteousfelon.com and using discount code BGN20 for 20% off your order of the best meat snacks you can get. I think that's all I've got. We will be back with you after week 1 to recap all of those games. Goodbye, everybody. All right, and I guess I'm just going to wait here now, Rachel, for RJ to come back.
Back. You got this.
I mean, you were gone for a long time. I wrapped up the show, but I mean, we could Rachel could just edit that out if you want.
Yeah, let's just edit. And I need to hear your song. I'm on a hotspot, so make it quick, and then we'll go.
Also, how does this work with the? So my song was Metallica's "Fuel." Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Because I felt like it was just like this energy, like pump up for week one. And I was thinking about Enter Sandman because also a great Metallica song, obviously the most well known. But the college football teams, was it Virginia Tech, uses that. I didn't want to I don't want a college football vibe. I wanted a different vibe, so I'm going with Fuel.
Okay. Then that's it. The listeners are going to see and hear all of this. So, Brandon, give them a word as we leave.
One word. Happy Friday. Nice.